Hello, and welcome to the Book Tapestry. Welcome to the show. Today, we are exploring a world that looks a lot like a dream but feels more like a coma. Imagine a life optimized so perfectly for comfort that the greatest threat you face is not a fire or a predator, but something far more insidious: white noise. I am Sophia Wordsmith, and this is Episode 3. Today, we are diving deep into Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, but not as a simple story about burning books. We are looking at it through a lens of existential mutation. Think about Guy Montag. When we first meet him, he is not a hero. He is a function. He is a gear in a massive, smooth-running machine that depends entirely on his absence as a conscious being. He loves the burn because it removes questions and replaces them with the finality of ash. This is what we call the summary society. It is a place where the pain of agency has been traded for the anesthesia of the summary. In this world, you do not have to choose, wrestle with ideas, or bear the weight of interpretation because the parlor walls and seashell radios do all the heavy lifting of consciousness for you. It is a frictionless existence, but it comes at the cost of the self. But what happens when the anesthesia wears off? Montag's journey begins when he steps off the path of the good civilian and accepts a terrifying new reality. That meaning is not a gift handed down by the state or a screen. Meaning is a metabolic weight. It is something that must be subjectively authored, carried, and sustained. If meaning is not given to you by your environment, and in a world of white noise, it never is, then you are the one who must carry it. We are going to discuss how a man stops being an object and starts becoming a subject. We will explore why that transformation, that surgery of existence, is the most violent, uncomfortable, and necessary thing a human can endure. Let us step into the fire. To understand Montag's awakening, we first have to understand the depth of his initial sleep. At the start of the novel, Montag exists in what we might call a bureaucratic coma. This is not just a lack of interest. It is a systemic state where the administrative apparatus of society operates with such perfect efficiency that no one feels personally responsible for what happens. This is a world built on the concept of being in itself, a term borrowed from Jean-Paul Sartre, to describe a solid object that lacks self-reflection. At this stage, Montag is a gear in a machine whose smooth operation depends entirely on his absence as a conscious being. While Sartre focuses on the object-like nature of the person, Albert Camus describes a specific psychological state called passive nihilism. We see this perfectly in Meursault, the protagonist of the Camus book, The Stranger. Meursault is a man oddly detached from the interior life that should accompany human existence. He is a stranger to his own emotions and choices. Like Meursault, Montag begins as a passive nihilist. He is someone who accepts the world as it is, not because he finds it meaningful, but because he has abandoned the effort to find meaning at all. This way path is a form of frictionless obedience. The highest virtue in this society is ontological hibernation. That is the active refusal to wake up to the anguish of choice. When you defer your judgment for long enough, it hardens into a structure. You lose the capacity to even feel the loss of your own agency. You do not see your passivity as a wound, you just float. This is the atrophy of the soul, a slow desensitization where critical thinking is treated as a systemic glitch that needs to be smoothed over. Montag begins as a mere function of the firehouse, wearing a practiced smile like a uniform, completely unaware that he is a ghost in his own life. The infrastructure that keeps this coma intact is sensory. It is the white noise. The city is a constant soundscape of media saturation, parlor walls and seashell radios, designed to act as ontological anesthesia. Its primary purpose is to drown out the internal void before a person can even hear it. In this world, silence is the enemy because silence allows questions to surface. The state's answer is to saturate every crevice of life with spectacle so that inner restlessness remains inarticulate. This is why Clarice McClellan is such a radical figure. She does not come with a manifesto or new information. She introduces gaps in the frequency. When she asks Montag, "Are you happy?" she is not giving him content, she is subtracting the noise. She creates pauses. The violence of her presence is not informational but temporal. She inserts intervals into a continuous stream. These pauses are where the surgery of existence begins, and they occur without a numbing agent. For a man sedated by sound, the first incision of self-awareness feels like pain. We see the raw pain of this awakening on the subway, where Montag tries to memorize the book of Ecclesiastes against the blare of a dental commercial. The jingle is a cognitive occupation, a rhythmic wall meant to prevent thought. But as Montag becomes lucid, this background static becomes an assault. His reaction is not a sign of weakness, it is lucidity experiencing the raw pain of a mind trying to function in a world designed to keep it silent. He realizes his mind is not a hard drive, but a fragile, leaking container. This is the sieve and the sand. The struggle to hold on to truth when your mind has been trained for the effortless summary. To hold the sand is to embrace grit, which is the opposite of the smooth, frictionless life the state provides. So, if the world is a sieve and your mind is the sand, how do you keep the truth from slipping through your fingers? You find something heavy. You find something that resists the flow. This is why the choice of Ecclesiastes as Montag's anchor is no accident. It represents an existential hard reset. In a world of parlor walls, the ultimate vanity, the biblical text's refrain that all is vanity acts as a metaphysical rebuttal. It reveals that the world does not come with ready-made guarantees of meaning. This is the starting line. Once you accept that meaning is not handed down by the state or the sacred page, you realize it must be metabolically authored. For Montag, memorizing these words is not an intellectual hobby, it is inhabitation. The words become part of his biological process, a heartbeat that cannot exist apart from the person carrying it. This brings us to a Sartrean realization. Montag is condemned to be the author and the carrier of his own truth. If he forgets the verse, there is no cosmic archive to save it. It dies with him. This inconvenience of the book, the fact that it demands contemplation and rereading, is actually its most vital feature. It provides the grit or friction that allows a human being to gain traction against the superfluid of a passive society. By becoming a vessel for these words, Montag accepts the anxiety of becoming a subject rather than just an extension of the machine. He is no longer just a good civilian following a this way sign. He is a man carrying a soul, and that weight is what makes him real. It is the weight of a person who has finally decided to stand still in a world that is constantly moving. This transformation from object to subject is tested when the summary society finally meets its end. The collapse comes by way of the bomb. It is a metaphysical rebuttal to a world that thought it could outpace mortality with spectacle. The bomb represents facticity. That is the brute, unyielding reality of death and history that resists all interpretation. The city becomes ash, and ash is the ultimate summary. It is the end of the narrative, something that cannot be edited or undone. Montag survives this by fleeing to the river, which acts as a tabula rasa, a clean slate. Unlike the city, where every sidewalk and sign dictated how to move, the river is unsummarized and indifferent. It offers no instructions, only the brute resistance of the current. To move through it, Montag must shed his digital skin, his social identity as a fireman, to reveal the author within. He joins the book people, exiles who have turned themselves into living archives. Their work is slow and intentionally inefficient. It is the exact opposite of the city's original leap into techno-anesthesia. They do not look for a cure for anxiety, they accept anxiety as proof of life. This leads to the final essential project, the mirror factory. Before they build comforts, they must build tools for self-confrontation. The mirror insists on a single heavy truth. I am the subject responsible for what comes next. The future will not be authored by algorithms or effortless summaries, but by humans willing to bear the metabolic weight of meaning. In the end, Guy Montag's story is the transformation of an object into a subject. He moves from the white noise of a passive life into the grit of existential responsibility. He teaches us that a world optimized for comfort is often a world where the soul is allowed to atrophy. We have seen how the bureaucratic coma and the acoustic anesthesia of modern life work together to strip us of our agency, making us mere functions of a larger machine. But we have also seen the power of the pause. That is the moment where we stop the noise and face the vanity of an unauthored life. Meaning is not something you find. It is something you carry. It is a metabolic process that requires effort, memory, and the willingness to endure the friction of critical thought. If you do not author your own meaning, the world will happily summarize your existence for you. As we close today's episode, think about your own mirror factory. Are you surrounding yourself with effortless summaries, or are you seeking out the grit that gives your life traction? The city of Fahrenheit 451 fell because it believed it could outrun mortality with spectacle. The survivors, led by the verses they carried in their minds, realized that a life fully inhabited is the only real defense against the void. I am Sophia Wordsmith, and this has been episode 3. If meaning is not given, you must be the one to author it through your own risky, luminous work of responsibility. Thanks for joining me for this deep dive into the soul of Montag. I will see you in the next frequency. Keep carrying the meaning. Thank you for listening to the Book Tapestry. If you found this helpful, please share it with a friend who prefers listening over reading. See you next time.